I'm hoping, let's see, here we go. Welcome to workshop number 3 for the Multimodal Transportation Safety Program. My name is Mary Poole, and I am one of the project managers for the MMTSP. Let me move these pictures over here. We're so glad to have you with us tonight. I do want to let folks know that this is a Zoom webinar, and questions are encouraged. We would love you to submit your questions throughout the course of the session through the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. So you can see it there. Just go ahead and type your question in. And Leslie, my co-project manager, will be holding those questions and sharing them at the predetermined points throughout the session. This, as we noted, this is also being recorded, and we will provide a link to the city's through the city's Facebook page and the website after it is completed. So before we get started, I do want to recognize that the presidential debate is getting started at, I believe, 6 p.m. The debate organizers did not check with us before scheduling, unfortunately, but we certainly understand if some of you want to hop off before we are finished with tonight's session. As I noted earlier, this workshop is being recorded. It will be posted to the city's website in the next few days. So again, please submit your questions and they will be answered. And we will post those responses on the website as well, so you don't have to watch the whole recording to find the answer to your question. We will also be moving through the project history portion of the presentation quickly. So to make sure that we have an opportunity to really talk about the MMTSP prioritization tool during the first 30 minutes. So with that said, I'm going to provide a brief overview of what we're covering tonight, which includes an introduction of our panelists, a brief overview of the MMTSP program, talking about how we got to where we are today, and then we're really going to dig into the prioritization tool. After we've covered that, we'll stop and have some time for question and answers. Then we'll move on to the next steps, and then hopefully we'll be through most of the bulk of the presentation before 6 o'clock, but then we'll be here to answer questions and answer questions afterward, and then again, those will be available in this webinar and on the website. So our panelists tonight are Leslie Blomquist, our city engineer. Myself, I've already introduced myself. Ian Conway is the project manager from STEER, our consultant team. Sarah McMenemy, also with STEER. Adam Best with Tool Design will be going over the prioritization tool in depth. And Nicole Baxter, our moderator. So I did want to just spend a moment just giving some general background on the MMTSP program. This is funded by a Caltrans planning grant, and at its core, it's intended to create an equitable and transparent process for the city to receive, analyze, and rank requests for neighborhood level traffic calming improvements. This process will also surface priority locations along our major corridors, but those will be taken out of the MMTSP neighborhood program and move into the capital arterial program. So just want to let you know that these larger issues will be addressed outside of the program, and the intention of the MMTSP really is at the neighborhood level. There were several components included in the MMTSP program development, including a comprehensive data review, which, among other things, identified hotspots throughout the city. Also, extensive community engagement, which included in-person meetings, pop-up events, online surveying, social media outreach, neighborhood champion engagement. I think we have some champions with us here tonight. And also participation in the various workshops. A logical and community-shaped prioritization process is one of the key elements, and also a neighborhood toolbox that Sarah will talk about later, and a written guide that will be available not only for the community, but also for staff to utilize. All of this leads to a stronger and more transparent and equitable process for us to plan together and program funding for improvements on an ongoing basis, and also for us to seek funding for larger projects. I want to give a special shout out to our neighborhood champions, Chad, Amy, Susan, and Melanie, and really want to recognize that these four folks have taken varying levels of active investment in this program. And I think Chad Singleton is probably the one who's been with us from even before the program got started. But they've done workshops. They've worked with their neighborhoods to be champions of their own streets and street safety. They've helped us get the word out. And they've also pledged to be continued involvement in the program as we implement. So thank you all. And I also want to invite anyone to be a champion for from a more formal level like Chad and Amy and Susan and Melanie, or just getting out and walking and biking, or modeling safe behavior in your neighborhood and how to drive safely, walk safely, bike safely. And now I'm going to hand it over to Sarah, who's going to tell us how we got to where we are today and take us through the next portion of this webinar.
Thanks, Mary. So the MMTSP has been in development over the past year through a process that combines resident input and priorities with a review of what's happening on the ground through data analysis. To get to this point, we've had 2 past workshops, one in the fall, one in the spring. The community champions have led workshops in their own neighborhood, and we've also launched a citywide survey to help feed community priorities into the prioritization element of the tool. Throughout this whole time, our team has been working to use all of this information to develop the tool that we're really excited to share with you today. Next, I'll briefly walk through the past community engagement efforts, starting with the past workshops. So our first workshop was almost a year ago in October of 2019. The focus of this first workshop was really on introducing the MMTSP, but we also asked attendees key questions like, what's most important to prioritizing projects, or what the biggest safety concerns are. We also asked what folks are currently doing to promote street safety in their own neighborhoods, and we got a lot of really good responses. In this first workshop, we also introduced the countermeasures, and we got a feel for what type of toolkit items people would be interested in seeing and using. In the second workshop, we presented the draft tool and collected input. We also shared the results of the citywide survey and also the results from the safety study. So throughout this whole kind of workshop process, we've been able to get a lot of good feedback, but we've also been able to hear about your personal experiences with traffic safety in your neighborhood, on your street, and the concerns that you have personally, and that's been very, very helpful to us as well. If you missed any of the past workshops, we do have content for those available on the MMTSP page of the Citrus Heights website. You can go and check it out. We have boards from Community Workshop number 1 and a YouTube recording from Community Workshop number 2. So if you're interested to see, what happened in those past workshops, please go check it out. So next, we're going to quickly cover the MMTSP survey results, which, along with the input from the community workshops, really directly inform the prioritization process within this tool that we're going to share with you tonight. The survey was put out to Citrus Heights residents to identify community-driven prioritization factors for assessing traffic safety concerns within the tool. We had really good response to the survey. We had 352 responses from residents throughout Citrus Heights, and respondents helped identify top concerns, with collision trends topping that list, but also things like street attributes, number of resident requests, and destinations adjacent to an area of concern were indicated as areas of high importance. Folks who responded to the survey also submitted ideas on how they currently or how they could in the future promote traffic safety within their own neighborhoods. So all of the responses from that survey were incredibly useful to us. Anything related to prioritization went directly into the tool, which Adam is going to share with you a little bit more later. So now I'll turn it over to Ian, who's actually going to introduce this MMTSP tool to you all.
Thank you, Sarah. So this next section is all about unboxing the prioritization tool and really forms the meat of this presentation. I will start off by giving a general overview to the tool and then pass across to Adam, who will talk in a little bit more detail about various factors. and show you as members of the community how you can access and use the tool. Let me be clear about one thing first of all. So this project and this tool, it's all about prioritizing safety requests on local streets. It's not about what happens on Greenback or Sunrise. It's all about the residential streets that you live on. And apologies that that message didn't come across clear enough in the previous engagement. And thank you for the feedback on that. So the city receives roughly 100 safety improvement requests from the community every year and has a significant backlog of these requests. Now, this prioritization tool prioritizes those requests so that the most effective safety improvements can be made first. And those improvements that are the most effective, they can then be put forward for funding in the city's capital improvement program. So how do we go about prioritizing all of these requests that have come in? Well, there's two key bits of information that we receive when a request comes in. There's its location. And then secondly, there's the issue at hand, the issue that it relates to. Using this information, we can look at things like street attributes, and we can look at factors like location and proximity to libraries, schools, parks. And Adam will talk about those factors in a little bit more detail in a moment. As much as we possibly can, we're basing this tool on what we've heard from the community. We had an absolutely fantastic response to the community survey that we put out earlier this year. And that response has been extremely helpful as it's made the project a lot easier. And it means that the outcome of the project, I think, will be a lot better as a result. So before handing over to Adam, just a quick reminder that you can submit a question by clicking on the Q&A box here. We invite as many questions as you have, and we'll try and answer as many of those as we can. So thank you. Adam.
Thanks, Ian. So this new method for prioritizing requests is effectively a two-step process. So step one includes documenting and scoring a resident request, and that uses contextual characteristics, and that ultimately results in a prioritization score. I'll speak to those specific characteristics in a few minutes. But if a location has been scored as a high priority location from step one, then step two in the process involves the city evaluating the location in more detail to determine the need for improvements and the type of improvement that is most appropriate. So as an example, if the high scoring request is related to speeding, the city may collect traffic volume and speed data to assess how serious an issue it may be. If the engineering analysis by the city determines there are issues, then countermeasures will be selected and the city will ultimately look for funding opportunities. A really interesting part of the step one process is that all of these requests, including the prioritization score, will be maintained on a public facing website that will be regularly updated by the city. So if you make a request for some type of traffic safety or calming on your street, it will be shown anonymously with the reported issue and a prioritization score. So these on the screen are the step one prioritization factors that I mentioned previously. So these are used to assess the level of priority for all resident requests. The volume of request, as Ian mentioned, is so large it really isn't possible to address every single one of them, but these factors help us to prioritize the ones that are most urgent. So as mentioned earlier, these prioritization factors are heavily influenced by what we heard from the community as the most important factors in how projects are prioritized on neighborhood streets. These rely on data that the city has available and are generally proximity based. As an example, you let us know previously that locations near schools should receive a heavier prioritization weight. Similarly, you mentioned that locations where there's a documented safety issue should also be prioritized. We're also accounting for locations near community centers and senior centers or senior housing. We also know that locations with poor lighting, as an example, are often directly tied to safety issues, so we want to account for that in this tool as well. We also want to attempt to spread improvements throughout the community. So we want to account for locations that have already received some type of traffic calming or safety improvements in the past. Similarly, as mentioned, we have hundreds of these historical requests, and some of these locations may have received multiple requests over the years. So this is something we also want to consider as we prioritize requests. Other items we want to consider in prioritizing project locations include proximity to bus stops, bike lanes or bike routes, and whether the location is already considered in a funded city plan. And lastly, we're also including an equity measure in project prioritization. So if the request is made in parts of the community that are federally designated as low or moderate income, we will also place increased weighting for those requests as well. So all of these factors really are used to develop a score for prioritizing traffic safety and traffic calming requests. So the website isn't live yet, but this screenshot gives you a bit of a sense of how this may look and of its functionality. You'll be able to toggle on and off different layers like parks and schools and bike lanes, and you can also look at data from specific years or search by priority scores. All of those elements that I just mentioned, you'll be able to see those on this map as well. It also functions a lot like a Google map, where you can type in your address and have the map zoom to that location. So it's pretty easy to use and to see all the information that goes into the scoring. So this is just an example of how these different layers can be toggled on and off and some of the available layers. So the layers shown here on the right, for example, are the types of safety or traffic calming issues that have been flagged by residents, including prioritization scores. You'll be able to see all the layers that make up the factors used for this prioritization. So as we've mentioned a few times, we're really dealing with a lot of resident requests. So that can be pretty overwhelming if you see everything on a map at once. So you'll also be able to filter through things to help narrow in on specific issues you may be most interested in. So for example, if you want to see only the requests from last year, that's something you can do. If you want to look at only the request where speeding was a reported issue, you can do that as well. The tool is really meant to be easy to use and transparent for really residents of Citrus Heights. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Leslie to talk through some of the questions that you may have about the tool.
Thanks, Adam. We do have some questions in. Specifically, residents on a particular street have been working on speed enforcement and abatement for years and have done everything the city has asked previously to demonstrate that there's a cut-through speeding problem on their street. And all the numbers and data points have shown that there is a problem. They're wondering if they're going to have to start all over with this new process, or will their street get some attention as soon as possible, potentially as a model for this program. Ian, would you mind?
Yeah, sure. I'll take that question, Leslie. The good news is that you don't need to start again. All of the prioritization requests that have come in and logged at the city will go into the tool and be assigned a prioritization score. What I might add to that is that the real intent of this program is to make the best or the most effective use of limited public funds. So it will be the areas that most need those safety improvements, the most effective improvements, and the most effective use of public funds that will be prioritized. In addition to that, I might also add that this program is more than just a tool. It's about encouraging safety in the community. And we've developed a toolbox that members of the community can use to help improve safety on their street. And I think we're going to be talking about that in a little bit more detail later on.
Thanks, Ian. Mary, would you be able to, we've seen the tool, we've gotten a little preview of it. Would you be able to tell us a little bit more about when that tool might be live for use by the public?
Sure. This tool will be going through finalization. We have a little more input that we're actually seeking through October 15th to get to some kind of final community input, and then we'll be finalizing it on the back end, presenting it to the City Council in early this winter, and then presenting it to the public in its launch form in the spring.
Thanks, Mary. Another question, will we be able to see which requests have been selected for implementation and the associated timeline with that? Ian, would you be able to answer?
Yeah, sure. I think at a high level, one of the main themes of this project is really to have a level of transparency where members of the community can see what's happening with their safety improvement request. They will be able to see which requests have been funded. For those that have not been funded, they will be able to see what their prioritization score is, be it low, medium, or high. In addition to that, they will be able to request a full list showing all the rankings of all of the safety requests that have come in. If I might add also, just because a request has come in for safety improvement on a particular street doesn't necessarily mean that a countermeasure will be installed. There's, as Adam mentioned, there's an engineering assessment that goes into this as well. So it really depends upon the outcome of that as well.
Thanks, Ian. And I think we'll save the rest of the questions for later on in the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. And so now we'll go ahead and move over to Sarah to take us through the next section.
Thanks, Mary. So during this next section, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can actually interact with the MMTSP, starting with how you submit a request. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Residents will still be able to submit requests related to traffic safety concerns. So the form to submit requests has actually been optimized to feed directly into the new tool. And this form is going to be available through multiple avenues. It will be available online on the city website. You'll be able to call in by phone to submit your request. And there will also be hard copies that you can come and fill in person at City Hall. So we really want to make it possible to submit a request in a way for you to submit a request in a way that you're most comfortable doing so. And no matter which way you choose to submit your request, the data that is collected will be the same. So with this new tool and this updated form, we're really shifting our focus from asking you to identify a solution for your street to really focusing on the identification of the problem. So what's the issue that's going on here? So today, we want to share with you some of the initial issue categories that we've come up with, and we'd really like to collect your feedback on those. So with that, we're going to come look at the different categories of requests that you'll be able to pick from. So you'll be able to select up to 3 of these issues. So I think that we aren't able to do a poll right now, but
we're going to try.
Great, thanks, Mary.
We're going to try the poll. So
we're going to launch a poll. So we are really interested to hear from you which of these different issues you most expect to be relevant or you would expect to use when submitting a request. There, so you can see the poll coming up on your screen now. You can select multiple ones of these, and we're just going to take a minute here so you can read through them. So let us know which one of these you think are most relevant for your neighborhood, for your area. so we can understand which ones might be most used on the form. Additionally, if you have any suggestions on additional issues or categories you'd like to see on this form, please let us know. You can submit it in the questions box below, or if you'd like to take a little bit more time to think about this, you please feel welcome to email us those suggestions. You can see the email at the bottom of the slide, mmtsp@citrusheights.net. So you can email those suggestions through the 15th of October. We're just going to take another minute so people can continue to submit their responses on this. Just to quickly run through these, different potential issues are vehicle speeds, crossing safety, reckless driving, failure to stop or yield at stop or yield signs, poor sight distance at intersection or driveways, failure to stop or yield for pedestrians or bikes, inadequate or missing street lighting, inadequate or missing sidewalks or bike lanes, trees or vegetation blocking signs or your view, or cut through traffic. So,
okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. Almost everyone has voted, and I'm going to see if I can share the results. And it looks like I can. And so as you can see, what the top results are, we really have a mix of issues in our community. So one of the things we're really looking for your feedback either through the Q&A section or by emailing us through October 15th is, have we captured the issues that you're most concerned about, and is there anything that you would recommend that we change?
Thanks, Mary. Great, so we'll now move on to other elements of the MMTSP, but as Mary said, if there's anything else that comes up, please email us through the 15th of October. So if we go to the next slide, thanks. So I really want to take a quick step back and look at the multimodal transportation safety program from like a high level. The MMTSP is made up of the tool and the interactive map, but it's also made up of the community toolkit and an MMTSP guide. And I really want to emphasize that the MMTSP is not just these pieces working in isolation. The program functions most effectively when all of these different pieces work together. So the MMTSP tool itself will give the city a roadmap of projects to address traffic safety issues and an order in which to address these concerns. But we really need the support and continued engagement of community members to support traffic safety within your own neighborhoods. So the toolbox and the guide are the tools that you as community members can use to support traffic safety and promote it in your area. So next we're going to dive into the toolbox and the guide in a bit more detail, starting with the toolbox. So this toolbox will provide materials that you need to promote traffic safety in your own neighborhood. We really focused on what you said you were most likely to use in the past workshops and in the survey. And what we heard from folks is that lawn signs, stickers, and car clings were the things that they were most interested in having. And I just want to emphasize that we understand that this toolbox doesn't replace the MMTSP tool, and it's not a traffic safety countermeasure. Instead, this toolbox really works in a way that complements the projects and the efforts made by the city. And so we really need your help. We hope you use it. We need your participation to make street safety synonymous with Citrus Heights. We need your support to get out this message that says, as a community, we care about street safety. It's important for folks when they're driving in Citrus Heights to be mindful and be a good neighbor in that practice. So we really hope that you'll use the elements of the toolbox. And next, we're going to talk a little bit about the MMTSP guide. So we're currently working on preparing the MMTSP guide, and the idea is to launch it with the tool itself. This guide will provide information on different countermeasures, which are physical treatments as well as non-physical strategies to address traffic safety concerns. So the guide, will give you an overview of each of the different countermeasures. It will discuss advantages or disadvantages of individual measures, and it will also help you understand how well each of these countermeasures addresses different issues or safety concerns that have been identified. So, with that, finally, I'll turn it over to Mary to talk a little bit about the next steps in the MMTSP process.
Thank you, Sarah. So as I mentioned, the entire program is planned to go to the City Council this winter for consideration of adoption. And then the launch is planned for this coming spring, and that will include outreach to everyone we currently have in our notification database. So if you have received a postcard or an email, or you're signed up on our e-notifier, you will receive information about the launch. We will also issue news alerts in the city newsletter and our regular communication platforms, city's Facebook site and social media posts. And with that, we'll move to the final question and answer period.
Thanks, and we do have some questions. Ian, there appears to be a backlog of requests. How long will requests remain on the list or map for prioritization and consideration?
So this is an item that we're currently discussing. The feeling at the moment is that requests will be kept on the list for a minimum of 5 years. If at that point the request has not been implemented, then there would be communication from the city to the residents to see, is that request still valid? Has the problem changed? And then there would be a decision made whether to keep that request on the list or not. I think in addition to that, I should probably add that all of the requests that have come in, of course, will be looked at, and none of the requests will fall off the list without any communication between the city and the resident.
Thanks, Ian. So we have a question about how does education and enforcement factor into the MMTSP? And this is one I'll respond to. So the MMTSP is going to complement existing enforcement efforts in Citrus Heights. We recognize that enforcement is a huge part of neighborhood traffic safety, but also, and unfortunately, the police department cannot be everywhere at once and cannot be on all the streets where we get complaints for. Therefore, it's really going to be a combination of enforcement, engineering, and education that is the best solution to address traffic safety on our roads. The MMTSP will review traffic safety concerns as they come in, and the General Services Department will work to identify countermeasures as appropriate, in addition to the ongoing enforcement by our Citrus Heights Police Department. We've also, as Sarah mentioned, developed the toolbox of items to help spread the word regarding traffic safety in Citrus Heights. That includes the lawn signs and car clings, which kind of complements the program through that educational component as well. And then finally, we do continue as a city with the General Services, Engineering, and Police Department, look to provide educational opportunities and work with our neighborhood schools and neighborhood associations. Of course, this has been a bit challenging this year as schools are in distance learning mode and neighborhood groups aren't able to meet in person. But if and when we return to school and able to meet in person, we will work with our principals and neighborhood representatives to identify opportunities to continue our educational efforts that we've had in the past. And the next question is, how are the requests that go directly to the police department considered in this process? Mary, would you be able to tell us about that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Leslie. The city is working with the police department to ensure that all calls regarding traffic safety are included in the MMTSP review. And the goal is to capture concerns from all methods, from all platforms, phone, email, website, phone app, and all departments, including engineering and police, into one central location where all the requests can be evaluated as part of the MMTSP program. So we're really working to consolidate and coordinate that process.
And our next question is regarding a serious and immediate concern. How are those going to be addressed? This is another one that I can speak to. So as concerns come in, they will continue as they have in the past to be reviewed by staff at that time. If an item is reported that is an immediate safety concern, staff would determine the best action at that time. In addition, the new form that residents will fill out when reporting concerns is designed such that you would identify immediate items and they would be routed to the appropriate person or department. So for example, if you call to report a stop sign that a bush is overgrowing and blocking that visibility for, you check that box, that would immediately go to our maintenance department for remediation versus going through this whole MMTSP process. We have another question regarding our toolbox. How can residents get access to the items in the toolbox, such as those lawn signs and window clings? Mary?
And I can take this one, Leslie, thank you. So we will have a limited supply available at City Hall. However, the files to make your own materials will be available for any group or individual that would like them. In addition, the neighborhood associations have access to funds on an annual basis, and creation of these signs and clings and other materials are eligible for the neighborhood improvement funding program. So if you are interested in partnering with your neighborhood, you can do that and they can submit a request to help fund those. Also, we would encourage you to work with any of the other nonprofits that operate in the city, such as the Rotary, the Optimists, and other groups that are operating to support the city overall.
And that concludes all the questions that we have currently. If there's any last remaining questions, please type them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Mary, would you be able to just tell us one more time where people can find this presentation after tonight and more information on the final steps?
Absolutely. So I sure can. Thank you all for participating. We really want you to stay engaged and stay tuned, and we'll do our very best to make sure that you do. You can find more information on our city web page specific for MMTSP, which is at the www.citrusheights.net/945. You can also email us at mmtsp@citrusheights.net. And you can also call us. The contact information is here on this slide. It's also available on the city website. And our phone number is 916-725-2448. That gets you right to City Hall. And then follow us on our social media pages as well. So with that, we really have now come to the end of the MMTSP Community Workshop number 3, and we just really appreciate everyone stepping up and being here tonight. We wanted to take this opportunity to remind you that anyone who registered for this webinar will get an email to visit the project website as soon as it's updated. We will also send out information to everyone on our email list in our database, and when we do the launch in the spring, you'll get a postcard as well. So just a reminder, we are seeking input on the issue categories through October 15th. So if you could email us on that or give us a call, whatever works best for you, that would be great. And we really want to thank you all for being here tonight, and a special thanks to our panelists and our communications team, Nicole and Haley. Thanks again, everyone. We're looking forward to your continued involvement, and your commitment to promoting safe streets is what really makes this program truly successful. So thank you and have a great evening.